Hi everyone. So I just wanted to make this video just to kind of explain my experience with generalized anxiety disorder. There's about 4 to 6% of people who experience generalized anxiety disorder in their lifetime. It could really appear at any age, depending on the stimulus, the external factors, genetics, things like that. So what is generalized anxiety disorder? So generalized anxiety disorder is having excessive worry, excessive anxiety about an event or a number of events. It doesn't have to just be limited to one. To be diagnosed, it has to be at least a recurring thing of 6 months. So it can't just happen once, and that doesn't count as a diagnosis. We all experience anxiety at some point in our lives. So to be diagnosed, it has to be kind of like an ongoing thing. What makes it different from other anxiety disorders is that it's not associated with panic attacks, phobias, or also obsessions, which could be, OCD, it could be panic disorder, it could also be, just a specific phobia that you have, agoraphobia, for example. For someone that has generalized anxiety disorder, it is difficult for them to control the worry, and the worry is so excessive that it hinders their ability to live day to day. Along with that, there has to be at least three others of these symptoms for it to be diagnosable. One is restlessness, or feeling on edge. The other is being easily fatigued, difficulty concentrating, or your mind going blank, irritability, muscle tension, and sleep disturbance. So either difficulty falling asleep or difficulty just maintaining sleep, restless sleeping, and all that. So at least three of those. There are also physical symptoms that come about from anxiety. So, when you feel anxious, sometimes, again, the muscle tension, you feel really tense, you feel on edge. You also feel irritability. So when you get irritable, you get angry, sometimes you feel hot, sometimes you get headaches. Anxiety could also be very taxing on the body, so you could also feel fatigue in addition to these symptoms. And again, restlessness, just kind of like not being able to stay in place for a long period of time. Also difficulty with sleeping, so we all know that sleep is very important for our mental health and our physical health. So if we're not able to sleep well, then it also is going to impact all these other symptoms. You don't have to have all of these symptoms to have generalized anxiety disorder. Again, it's only excessive anxiety and worry, and then three of the symptoms that I had mentioned previously. And the physical symptoms could come and go with those symptoms, depending. So you don't need to have all these things to be diagnosed as generalized anxiety disorder, but it does have to be for a duration of at least 6 months. These symptoms have to cause a significant delay in your everyday functioning. So it may make it more difficult for you to do normal things that maybe wouldn't impact someone that doesn't have generalized anxiety disorder. And it's also important to note that this anxiety is not being caused by a substance or a medical condition. Some people feel more anxious when, let's say, that they take marijuana, that they smoke marijuana. Those are completely separate things. So who experiences generalized anxiety disorder? It's twice as likely to be experienced by a woman than a man. With that in mind, generalized anxiety disorder can also coexist with the most occurring one would be major depression. So anxiety and depression could definitely coexist. They kind of feed off of each other, or one could have caused the other one. But it also could be coexisting with a bipolar disorder. It could also be existing with substance abuse issues or other anxiety disorders, like I mentioned before, panic disorder, OCD. So what are risk factors? So what makes you more disposed to get generalized anxiety disorder? There's a few things. Genetics. It could be something that someone in your family may have, and it's in the DNA, and it's something that has been passed down. It could also be just prolonged childhood abuse or stress. physical abuse, emotional abuse. It could also be exposure to stress in your home environment. So like unstable environments could definitely take a toll on the child's development, the way that they grow up, feeling anxious and tense and all that. That could definitely be a factor. And another factor is excessive use of a certain substance. So it could be prescription, it could be substances like drugs. Um, so that could also have an impact. Now that we've gone through the symptoms and all that, so my experience. So I definitely have had anxiety since I was a child. I didn't know what anxiety was per se, so I just thought it was normal. And it's funny because a lot of my family, they would label me as a shy girl, and and I mean it was because I was very shy growing up as a child. I was very to myself. I was very closed off. I didn't really speak much unless spoken to. And that definitely can be interpreted as shy, so I don't blame him for that. But really looking back at it, I could definitely tell that it was anxiety. I just didn't know what it was, or I didn't know why I was like that. When it comes up in childhood, it could be, again, due to external factors, genetics, stress, unstable environment, things like that. In mind, it could also impact, like maybe you worrying about school. So I was very anxious about my grades. Also, I was involved in tennis in high school, and I put a lot of pressure on myself to always win and to be the best. And if I didn't win, I would feel really bad, and like all this pressure. The same thing with grades. If I didn't get A's, and I felt like kind of inadequate. So that definitely was kind of self-induced, but also in a way it could have been stress from parental figures as well. As an adult now, I do still have anxiety. Like you could tell that there's anxiety. So now as an adult, I kind of worry about like finances, my health, work, any kind of stressful stimuli. I didn't seek counseling until I was in college, and Berkeley is where I started getting my mental health services, because I knew that there was something kind of going on and I just didn't know what it was. And I kind of figured it was anxiety, but I got confirmation of generalized anxiety disorder along the years that I've been in therapy. That definitely has helped my anxiety. I feel like I'm more outspoken now than before, and I am learning coping skills, and I could definitely talk more about those coping skills in another video. So the symptoms that I mentioned earlier, they're from the DSM-5 in order to be diagnosed for generalized anxiety disorder. I have some symptoms that weren't kind of defined within those lines, and I kind of just wanted to bring it up. And again, these are just based off of my experience. When I feel like there's a lack of control of a situation, I get really anxious. For example, like I'm very like a type A personality, kind of like very goal oriented. Like I like a to-do list, and I like to get things done in an orderly manner. So yeah, lack of control of the situation is what makes me feel anxious. Thinking also worst case scenarios. So of any situation, I think the worst of the worst could happen. Like again, bringing up work as an example, I made an error at work, and it got to the point where I thought I was going to get fired, and it was something very minor looking back at it, but at the moment I felt like I was going to get fired. I was going to get written up for it. I was going to get my license suspended, and like so many things that came into mind with that one error. And again, I also had anxiety dreams over the weekend, because it happened on a Friday, so I had anxiety dreams all weekend. And then Monday, comes to show that it was something that could be fixed, and I wasn't reprimanded for it. So it could be over, it's something that that is kind of like I'm overthinking it, and like that things will be fine, and it's difficult to be positive about stuff, about scenarios, about outcomes and all that when you have anxiety. That also it has recently, especially, it has impacted my memory. I feel like maybe I'm overthinking about a lot of things, about so many different things, that I end up forgetting things that I probably shouldn't forget. Like I always have a checklist because I forget things. Like, I mean, I have one for the video right now. um, but yeah, like I tend to forget things that, like, if even things like that I'm doing in the moment. Like if I go to the fridge for something, I forget what I'm doing. I forget what I'm even looking for and all that. And it's kind of troublesome to me sometimes because I have to constantly remind myself, like mentally check in my head, like, hey, I need to do this, I need to do this. I write it down. That's the best way because I'm able to just check off the things that I need to do and still have the list of what else I need to complete. Like anxiety affects the way that I also kind of process situations that could be stressful or traumatic. Um, so if you think of the whole fight, flight, or freeze kind of reaction, like I feel like people with anxiety are more prone to freeze because they get so overwhelmed with their thinking, with their emotions and all that, that they're not able to react just like that. I mean, this is the case for me. I'm not saying everyone with anxiety deals with that, but I feel like that's something that could definitely be a factor if you do have anxiety. I don't get panic attacks, which is something that is more associated with panic disorder, but I do get anxiety attacks. And anxiety attacks are usually caused by a stimulus. It's caused by something maybe that you're worrying. Sometimes panic attacks are really random and very unexpected. Anxiety attacks, I know they happen for a reason. I know they happen because I get overwhelmed with the situation or a problem or whatever it is. I mean, it really depends on how things are going in my life, but I would say I have them at least 2 times during a month. And again, it happens when I feel really stressed out. I start having difficulty breathing. I also start like overthinking and over worrying, and then that causes me to kind of sometimes lose control of my emotions. Sometimes I have crying spells, or I break down. Sometimes I even hyperventilate just because I get so overwhelmed. Um, and my partner has seen this before. My boyfriend, he's very good at helping me when I do have those anxiety attacks. Thank you for that. um, and yeah, I mean, it's just really just trying to regulate my breathing. I find is what is helpful, and again, I could also address that in a separate video. But that is something that I have that isn't mentioned in the symptoms of the DSM. But it's not panic attacks, because I mean I don't feel like I'm like dying. I don't feel like I'm dying when I'm having this anxiety attack, and that's usually a feeling that comes up um, with panic attacks. Not for everyone, but for some people. So generalized anxiety disorder is something that there's not a specific cure for it, but with treatment, mental health treatment of therapy, and also medication could also help with people. I personally, again, I have been in therapy on and off since my early 20s, 28 right now. So, and I have tried medication in the past for anxiety, depression, um, but at least for me, it didn't really work out. Um, so I didn't take it. I'm not taking it now. I just feel that it makes me very zombie-like, and that's only that's my personal experience with it. I didn't like the way that I felt on it, and I mean, who knows? Maybe another medication might have worked for me if I kept on trying different medications. But I just kind of wanted to deal with it on my own and kind of learned coping skills for myself to use instead of medication. And I'm not saying medication is a bad thing. It was just a personal choice for me. Some medication actually helps a lot of people. As I had mentioned before, anxiety disorder, specifically generalized anxiety disorder, can be coexisting with major depression. And I could say in my experience that is the case. I mean, that's just something I kind of, it kind of goes hand in hand sometimes, where, you know, you get so anxious and over worried and negative thinking and not being able to relax and all that, not being able to sleep. Um, so all of that in mind, it kind of makes it sometimes it is depressing to have anxiety disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, just because it's very exhausting and it's very taxing on your body and your mind. And sometimes you feel like you're not able to get out of that loop of overthinking and over worrying, and yeah, I mean, with that, it's gonna feel depressing sometimes. At least in my experience, it could feel very overwhelming at times, and I feel like sometimes there's just not a way around it and a way to get over it. But it is manageable, so I'm not trying to scare anyone. It is definitely manageable. Um, a symptom that I experienced personally is kind of dissociating, and dissociating is kind of sometimes having moments of being detached from your body. Sometimes when your mind goes blank, like I had mentioned as one of the symptoms, um, that could be part of dissociating. Just when you're maybe in a stressful situation where your mind can't mentally handle it at that moment, and sometimes you just dissociate. Sometimes that's a coping skill. From the symptoms that I was talking about, I do deal with all of them. So I do deal with, I mean, excessive anxiety and worry. I mean, you have to have that in order to have generalized anxiety disorder. At least for 6 months. I mean, I've been having anxiety since as long as I can remember, so I could definitely tick that off. I don't have panic attacks. I have anxiety attacks. I don't have a specific phobia or an obsession to not be on edge. I find it difficult to not be on edge, and just kind of feeling very restless all the time. I definitely do feel fatigued, and that's because with the other symptom, disturbance of sleep patterns, I do often have irregular sleeping or difficulty sleeping sometimes. Muscle tension, I definitely have muscle tension. I definitely feel it over here, my shoulders, on my neck. Sometimes I have to kind of massage myself just because I feel like the muscle tension kind of builds up from the stress that I'm feeling. And yeah, so that's definitely something that I deal with. Irritability, I definitely deal with that also, just because I sometimes, for example, let's just say that I end up like losing something. Like I know losing something is definitely like a trigger for me. So like if I misplace something or if I lose something, wallet, keys, whatever, I end up feeling very, very frustrated at myself. I feel like very like, God, I need to find it. I need to find it. I need to find it to do this and this and this. If I can't find it, then all of this is gonna happen. I'm gonna have to do this, and I'm gonna have to replace it, and all these things that just kind of pop in my head because I can't find that certain thing. And I feel also very frustrated at myself. Like, how did you lose that? Like, um, I mean, you just had it, and like things like that. Like a lot of negative self-talk that kind of goes into it. Difficulty concentrating and mind going blank, or mind going blank. So that's definitely something that I deal with. Sometimes I feel like I have so much to do, so much to worry about, so much to think about, that it's difficult to kind of just focus. Um, it's that's why it's helpful for me to have checklists sometimes, because I could give priority to some other things. Um, and my mind going blank is it's part of the whole dissociation, just because of, again, I get so overwhelmed that sometimes my mind can't handle it at that moment. It doesn't last for that long. It's just kind of like a spur of the moment kind of thing. So yeah, that's my experience with generalized anxiety disorder. But if you guys have any questions pertaining to my experience or just in general about the symptoms of generalized anxiety disorder, you guys could leave a comment down below. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch this video, and yeah, just comment down below for the next video that you would like to see on mental health. Bye guys!